French coconut pie is the best because it's unique and delicious. Similar to coconut chess pie, it's a custard style pie that has the delicious combination of flavors and textures. The sweetness of coconut, the tanginess of buttermilk, the richness of butter, and the nuttiness of pecans. But best of all, this recipe is really easy. Over here, I have a 9-inch pie crust. Of course, you could buy one in the store, but as always, I made my own. That pie crust is unbaked. I did not prick it with a fork. I did absolutely nothing. In this bowl, I have 6 tablespoons of butter. I use 2 tablespoons to make the pie crust, but if you just want to use a full stick, that should be fine. Of course, we need coconut. I am using just over 2/3 of a cup, 170 grams of sweetened flaked coconut. A lot of the recipes say not to use sweetened coconut because it might make the pie too sweet, but I think I'm going to adjust the recipe to account for that. I'm not going to use unsweetened coconut because I think most people, they're going to have sweetened coconut on hand, or that's what they'll be able to find in the store. So that is why I am using that. Of course, buttermilk, half a cup of buttermilk, 120 grams. If you don't have buttermilk, I would use half a cup of evaporated milk with a teaspoon of either white vinegar or lemon juice added. Can't forget the sugar, 1 cup or 210 grams of white granulated sugar, 3 large eggs, and finally 1 teaspoon of coconut extract. If you don't have that, I would use vanilla, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. The first step in this French coconut pie recipe is melting the butter, so I'll do that in the microwave and then I'll bring you back. I just finished melting the butter in the microwave. It's hot, so I don't want to add the eggs directly to it. I don't want to cook them, so I'm going to start off with the sugar and the coconut. There goes the sugar, the coconut. Since I toasted the pecans, you might be thinking, Parnell, why didn't you toast the coconut as well? I think you probably could. I know that when I made my coconut chess pie, the coconut that was on the top seemed to toast on its own. So maybe if you did toast the coconut, it might get too dark. I'm not quite sure. But the recipes that I saw online for French coconut pie, none of them called for toasted coconut. So that is why I have decided not to add toasted coconut to mine. Now for the buttermilk, the eggs. Break these up really quickly. And now I'm just going to mix to combine. I don't even need a mixer. Now I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of coconut extract, my 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Honestly, I don't think this will make it sour. It's just going to help cut down on the sweetness since I use sugar and sweetened coconut. I'm also going to add my 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Mix everything together. And now as my oven is preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm going to pour my custard into my unbaked pie shell. Now that I'm done mixing my filling, I'm going to pour it into my unbaked pie shell. Now that the filling is in my pie and I used a spoon to smooth it out, it's time for the oven. As you can see, I'm baking this on a pizza pan. I highly recommend you bake your pie on something. It's a lot easier to move around, and if it boils over in the oven, it won't mess up the bottom of the oven. This is going to bake uncovered at 350 for, I'm guessing, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but I'll let you know. My pie just came out of the oven. It was in at 350 Fahrenheit uncovered for 55 minutes. It smells incredible. This pie looked really interesting, so I couldn't wait to dig in. Honestly, this French coconut pie recipe was a great success because it was absolutely delicious. I've had other pies with coconut, such as coconut chess and Japanese fruit pie, but I never had a coconut custard pie, especially one with buttermilk. And I have to admit that the buttermilk made me kind of nervous. But my questions and concerns were gone the moment I took my first bite of this pie because I fell in love with it instantly. This French coconut pie was absolutely fantastic. The taste is kind of hard to describe. It tasted like coconut, but tempered because of the buttermilk with some pecans in the background. So I guess you could say that it tasted like a lot of things at once. I know that the combination sounds kind of odd, especially like I said with the buttermilk, but it all worked together perfectly. First of all, the coconut and pecan flavors were balanced perfectly, so even if you don't really like coconut or if nuts aren't your thing, I think you'll still like this pie. But I think that the key ingredient in this recipe is actually the buttermilk, because the tanginess of the buttermilk helped to balance out the sweetness of the coconut. So even though I used sweetened shredded coconut, the kind that you're most likely to find in the grocery store, this wasn't overly sweet because of both the buttermilk and the tablespoon of vinegar. I also thought that the pie had a great combination of textures because the coconut on the top toasted, resulting in a crispy top and a soft, moist layer inside. The pecans added just the right amount of crunch. So like I said, it all worked together in perfect harmony. I know that I toasted the pecans, but not the coconut. And looking back, I think that was definitely the right thing to do. This pie had more coconut than pecans, but because the pecans were toasted, I felt like the flavors balanced themselves out very well. On the other hand, if I had toasted the coconut as well, the coconut flavor might have overpowered this. And besides, it might have turned out too brown on the top anyway. Another thing that I really liked about this pie was that it looked both elegant and homemade at the same time, a very rare combination. That's why I think this would be the perfect dessert for Mother's Day, as well as other holidays such as Easter, Christmas, a Sunday dinner, or just because. The recipe aside, you're probably wondering how French coconut pie came to be. There's not a lot of history on this pie on the internet, but from what I could find out, it seemed like this recipe originated in the southern United States in the 1800s. Similar to bananas and canned pineapple, coconuts were imported into the southern United States and southern cooks fell in love with them. Dried, shredded coconut had a long shelf life, so that's why it found its way into a lot of southern recipes, such as coconut cake, carrot cake, and a lot of other things. If you think about it, coconut, pineapple, and bananas from Central and South America have found their way into a lot of classic southern recipes, such as hummingbird cake, carrot cake, coconut cake, and a lot of other things. It's really interesting how people can fall in love with ingredients that are imported into their country and get creative with them and use them in other recipes. Sadly, there aren't a lot of French coconut pie recipes on the internet, but I wanted to say that I first became aware of this pie through Collard Valley Cooks. There are other recipes from people like Paula Deen, Trisha Yearwood, Martha Stewart, and others, so be sure to check those out as well. This pie is surprisingly easy and delicious, so I hope you give it a try. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.